Welcome to Season 4 of the ILETA Learning Lab. In Season 4 of the ILETA Learning Lab, we bring you interviews with ILETA members where we discuss important issues in law enforcement training. Unlike the first 3 seasons in this in the ILETA Learning Lab, Season 4 will not just feature members who presented at the conference, but these interviews will feature a whole host of ILETA members who are going to talk about a variety of subjects and topics of interest to law enforcement trainers. These interviews are created to serve as a professional development benefit for ILETA members, providing the opportunity for up to 50 hours of additional training every year. I'm Brian Willis, the Deputy Executive Director for ILETA and your host for the ILETA Learning Lab. And today's interview is with Brian Smith, and we're talking about branching out with training beyond just actual law enforcement officers. A little bit of background on Brian. Brian is a family man with 4 daughters and 1 son. He has 43 years in law enforcement. He started in 1978 with Chicago Heights Police Department and retired after 30 years of service at the rank of captain. Immediately after retiring, he accepted a police chief position with the Glenwood Police Department. He is currently serving as a full-time patrolman at Prairie State College Police Department and part-time patrol officer with Stager Police Department. Brian has been involved in training at every agency where he was employed. He also began his martial arts training a number of years ago, back in 1974, studying in a variety of disciplines, and was inducted into the Illinois Martial Arts Hall of Fame in 2007. Brian founded the Metropolitan Police Self-Defense Institute, teaching law enforcement and civilians in defensive tactics. Brian first became a law enforcement firearms instructor in 1986 and has earned approximately 18 firearms instructor and related certifications. Between 1995 and 2008, Brian created and commanded the 1st Special Operations Unit at Chicago Heights Police Department until his retirement in 2008. He also created the agency's first 40-hour tactical team operations course for this unit. Brian has been involved in teaching topics such as urban stealth, rappelling, tactical pistol craft for the annual SWAT Academy hosted by the South Suburban Emergency Response Team in the Chicago area. Brian is still very active teaching concealed carry classes and self-protection workshops to community organizations. He's also a freelance writer with approximately 200 articles published on firearms and self-defense topics. Brian was named the Outstanding Trainer of the Year in 1993 by the Midwest Tactical Training Institute, the Law Enforcement Firearms Instructor of the Year in 2014 by the National Rifle Association Law Enforcement Division, and was the Trainer of the Year for ILETA in 2016. He's an active member of several professional organizations, currently holding positions with the Board of Directors with ILFE, National President of the American Federation of Police Concerned Citizens, and the Senior Vice President of the National Association of Chiefs of Police, and he's also a graduate of the 184th session of the FBI National Academy. So, Brian, welcome to the ILETA Learning Lab.
Thank you, sir, for having me.
Well, it's certainly a pleasure, and now, as I mentioned in the introduction, we're going to talk about branching out and beyond just training law enforcement officers. And you've been training police families, you've been training members of the community, and I'd like to talk about some of those programs, why you just started to teach those programs, and what are some of the elements and what you've seen as a result of that. Now, you started educating police families on how not to become a victim, and in 2010, you started a course called Basic Pistol Fundamentals for Police Wives. It was originally restricted to wives, daughters, and mothers of police officers, and then subsequently opened up to any women that wanted to participate. What inspired you to reach out and start teaching police families and educating police families on how not to become victims?
All right. Now, in Chicago Heights, we had to live in our community that we worked. And so, therefore, there was a residency requirement that you had to live here. So, therefore, everyone knew eventually that you were a police officer in the neighborhood. I was commanding a special operations unit where it was selective enforcement, where we dealt with the crime, the drugs, and things like that. So, in the early 90s, when our street drugs and gangs and stuff was very prevalent, well, I was subject to a lot of retaliation. To my house, my cars got scratched up or blew up or whatever, and one got blew up right at my driveway. So when we start talking about training for the police families, the police officers are trained. and from the academy or the in-service training about defensive tactics, survival techniques, firearms, and things like that. But their families are not, and so their families are just as much as a victim, can be a victim to the ill effects of society because they want to get back at the police officers. So a lot of times the cowards will go after the families because they're easy prey. So back in 2010, I was a chief of Glenwood, but I still had the close contacts with all the guys in Chicago Heights, the range master there, and I had a staff like us. And so we were discussing one day at a guy's house. We were all getting ready to go to a conference, and so we were thinking about discussing safety for our families. And so while we're sitting there talking, one guy said, well, I told my wife, the gun is in the drawer. If she need it, that's where it is. And then there was that moment of silence, and everybody bust out laughing because we know all these years we didn't told our families, do not touch this gun. It is dangerous and things like that. But when we think about 100 miles away and you get that stress call from your wife or your kids where they might call you first before they call the police, and then you got to tell them to hang up and call the police. So we started talking about that. So I said, let's host a class. And so one of the wives heard us and said, "Yo, you guys are just talking. I know some of you have been drinking already, so I don't think y'all know what y'all talking about." So now the challenge is on. We're gonna put this class on. We did it at our local Moose Lodge at their gun club. That was our first class. And that wife showed up too, and she was very impressed, and we had about 14 women at the time. And then from there, we said, well, let's continue doing this. Now, the class is free of charge. All the instructors, we all volunteer our time to do it. And it worked out great. When we had to move from the Moose Lodge, we moved to another range, another venue. And so there we had to collect a range fee for the women. And that's all they have to pay, just their range fee. And so we don't have to come out of our pocket. And, man, it has been working great for us. Like I said, we host 3 classes a year, every May, July, and October. And it has been great for us. Now, we hold up to 20 women in the class. I have a staff of 6 that comes and volunteers on a regular basis. And sometimes we get some of the civilian certified instructors that will come in as guest instructors trying to get their experience as instructor. They'll help along with the class. We've had great sponsors with that, the National Association of Chiefs of Police and the American Police Hall of Fame has acted as sponsors for us since the inception of this program, where they provide gifts and fraternal items for people in the class. So we got a lot of support from it. And it's just been really working for us. It's very rewarding for us to have a woman come into class looking at her husband's gun like it's a snake in a box. And by the end of the day, she's very comfortable, very proficient with the gun, but we always encourage them to come back. One day we know it's not going to be enough, and we know you're not going to practice enough. So come back to this class as many times as you want. We have one lady that came back 12 times and always bring somebody with her. And that's very rewarding for us, very satisfying for us.
Excellent. Now, originally you opened the course or restricted the course, I guess, depending on how you look at it, wives, daughters, and mothers of police officers. So did you get some of the daughters and mothers of police officers that were taking this program in addition to the spouses?
Yes, we did. And so then I got approached by the firemen. Well, how come our wives can't come? And you're right, how come they can't? So we opened it up for them. And every woman that called always said, well, can I bring my friend? Can I bring my daughter? Can I bring my mother? Or something like that. And so after a while, we just realized we might as well just open it up for everybody. So now, at this point, we don't turn the women away. Anybody can come. And like I said, it's still free of charge. And we only host this, 3 times a year. And it's really been working out.
Now, do you have any interaction with the spouses or the sons or the fathers of those women that are attending to encourage them to perhaps continue to take their wife or their mother or their daughter, whoever attended this training, to the range for ongoing training?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And also, my family, along with some of the other families around in the area, we all go to this Iroquois County Fairground. And during the winter months, not the winter months, but the summer months, they have a pistol match there. It costs about $8 to go. It's challenging. It's a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of the families go, and we have so much fun there. And we always try to encourage the women. If you want to learn how to bowl, you go where the bowlers are. If you want to learn how to shoot, go where the shooters are. So we encourage a lot of people to come out there, and we've been getting a great response with that also.
Now, do you get requests from husbands of female law enforcement professionals that may not have a familiarity with firearms? They didn't grow up around firearms, and it's kind of the same thing where maybe their spouse says, hey, if I'm at work or I'm out of town, the gun's in the drawer if you need it. Otherwise, don't touch it. That to provide that type of training to male spouses as well?
Well, we necessarily have not did it exactly for male spouses. We do have a co-ed class. Some of the women that can't attend that still labeled as a police wives class. Where they come to the co-ed class, and so the husband and wives would prefer to come together, whatever. So we have a regular commercial class that we have, but the police wives class is just something totally separate.
Excellent.
And that's our way of getting back.
And it's such a great program because, like you said, I think that there's probably a lot of officers have had that discussion with their spouse about here's where the gun is if you need it, but that's where it stops, and there's not that level of training or proficiency. Now, you subsequently, several years later, you created another course called Basic Pistol Fundamentals for Children of Police Officers. Again, it was free of charge, and this was for children of law enforcement officers that were 12 to 16 years old. Can you talk about that program?
Yes. If you look up statistics of accidental gun fatalities and compare it to accidental vehicle fatalities, both with teenagers, you'll find actually they're pretty equal in numbers. Some of the, we talk about car accidents, sometimes not necessarily that kid's fault that he get into he might get hit, might slide off because of dry, we'll call black ice or whatever on the roadway and hit a car. But with we talk firearms fatalities involving teenagers, some of that can be prevented by gun safety training and things like that. And we're a big advocate on this. If you have a gun in the house, train everybody on how to use it. That'll alleviate curiosity and anything else. Now, anything else in our house, we have tools, we have kitchen knives, we have butcher knives, we have a lot of things in our house that we like to make sure our kids know how to use so they can be safe when using it. But we have a firearm that we tell them don't touch it, and that's where that's where kids get hurt. But I myself personally have responded to 4 incidents where a child has found a gun in the house, playing with it or whatever, trying to figure out how it works, and accidentally injure or kill someone in their home. That is very troubling to me. Now, I want to share a story with you, and the reason why I really pushed for this class. I was 8 years old. We lived in St. Louis at the time. We lived in an apartment over a shoe store, Red Goose shoe store. I bring this up in every class, and I wrote an article about it, but my mother didn't know about it until 50 years later. But anyway, I was 8 years old. We're in our parents' room. My dad was at work. My mother went downstairs, went to the store. And we were digging through this drawer for some reason. My brother is a couple years younger than me. We found a revolver. Now, I had never fired a live gun before, but we had Mattel guns. And Mattel guns were very similar in operation to an actual live gun. And we grew up every Saturday morning watching The Lone Ranger, Cisco Kid, Roy Rogers, things like that. And so we thought we knew how to handle a gun and all that. So I'm standing in the window, pointing this gun out the window at the foot traffic, because we lived at that time in this apartment. It was in a business area in St. Louis on Martin Luther King Drive. At that time, it was called Eastern Avenue. And business area, it was shops, restaurants, nightclubs, and things like that. So heavy foot traffic. And I'm pointing the gun out the window, lining up my sights, saying, bang, I got this one. Bang, I got that one. Bang, I know I hit that one. And so then I pulled the hammer back, because that's what I always saw on the cowboy movies. They always pulled the hammer back to cock the gun. And I did that. Now, we all know it. Firearms instructors all will know. Eventually, you're going to touch that trigger, and that gun discharged out that window and blew out the neon lighted sign that said Red Goose Shoes. So you can hear all the glass crashing to the ground. I put that gun back in the drawer and sat down and started watching TV. My mother walked into the apartment, and she said, some fool shot a gun outside. And I said, did anybody get hurt? And she said, no. But if she came and touched my chest at that time, She knew my heart was pounding. She knew I knew something about that. And it always resonated with me. And so I always thought about every kid that I have, and I have 5 of them, all of them have learned how to shoot. And so therefore, we host this class so we can teach others how to shoot. If you have a gun in the house, the best thing to do is make sure everyone learns how to use it like anything else. Now, when our kids turn to teenagers, we want them to learn how to drive. We want them to be independent and things like that. And a vehicle is a very dangerous weapon, too, if used in the wrong way. So therefore, let's train them on how to use these guns in the house so they can be safe, too.
Excellent. And I was chuckling to myself as you were telling that story because I'm drawing a blank now on the name of the book and the author, but I actually read that story in a book. And I was thinking, hey, I know that guy. So I don't know if you know.
I got a call from somebody from England or something like that who called me about this story I wrote.
Yeah, well, this was actually in a book, and I'll have to look up the name of the book and get back to you. But the author was telling that story and gave your name, okay. and I said, hey, I know that guy. So it's such a powerful story. Now let's go back to the pistol basic pistol fundamentals for police wives course first. Okay. What are some of it for people that are thinking, you know what, that's a great idea. Maybe they've thought of it before, just never got around to doing it. What are some of the elements of that training that you incorporated? So what are some of the keys that you would recommend to fellow trainers? Hey, if you're going to start this for this audience, here's some things that you would want to be incorporating into that training program based on your experience.
All right, on my experience, what we found out right at the beginning is women will walk into that class with their firearm in a gun box, of course, and that's required. But they will come in there looking at that gun like it's a snake in a box. They're afraid to touch it because they've been told all those years, don't touch this baby because, it's dangerous and all that. And what they see on TV as far as, accidental discharges, mishaps, and things like that. So I crack a lot of jokes. I had those women laughing all day. And so that kind of eases some of the tension that they experience when they come in there. And so I always introduce myself when they walk in, go right up, shake their hand, say something funny, have them all laughing, have them sit down wherever you want. And we're always filling out papers and things like that. And I just have them laughing and laughing and laughing. And some of them throw some jokes back at me. I throw some back at them. And we kind of break the ice that way. And then we start from step 1, holding the gun, just showing you how it operates, how it works, taking the magazine out. If they got a revolver, how to break the action open. And we just go over it and over and over. And now, as you know, and any other instructor know, anything you do 45 to 55 times is going to become part of your memory. If you do 1,000 times, it's going to become instinctive. So we start at the classroom, and we do all these different things. I give them all dummy rounds so they can learn how to load the gun, load the magazine, how to clear the gun. How when we say unload and show clear, they know what the procedure are. So now, when we get out to the range, like 2 to 3 hours later, they're very comfortable with the pneumatics of how to operate that gun. Now, some of them have fired a live gun before, but we start with 1 round because I don't want somebody to just shoot the gun and drop it and make it unsafe. I have enough people on the range to make sure that they're safe as far as the shooters are safe as far as handling the gun and don't do anything panicky that they might turn the barrel, flag anybody else next to them, anything like that. So starting with 1 round, they fire that round. All right, now all that stress is gone. Then we start with 2 rounds. That stress is gone. And then we just kept building up. By the end of the day, we have them walking and shooting. We have moving targets set up. We have a lot of different things that really challenge them by the end of the day. We have an official graduation ceremony. And like I said, most of the women come back and bring friends because they had a great time. Also, at the same time, what I do is we create a video, maybe about 10 minutes or so like that, add music to it. You can see it right on YouTube. If you go to Basic Fundamentals for Police Wives, all the videos are up there. And they can see what they're going to encounter before they get to the class. And we always encourage them to do that. And they can see everyone's having a great time. Now, if you took your own wife to a range and you sit there and trying to instruct her, you'll be there about half an hour before you end up shooting at each other. I heard what you said, You said it the first time, don't talk to me in that tone, and things like that. Well, when we get out to this class, by the time we get out to the range itself, I'm yelling at the women, screaming at them and everything like that. And the thing is, they love me for it because I'm not their husband, boyfriend, brother, or anything like that. And at the end of the class, some of them say, I can see the routine to your madness. Thank you.
Excellent. So it's a one-day class. Now, I'm assuming that if for people that are going to start this, you need to be prepared for a pretty broad range of weapons, as you said, from semi-automatic pistols to revolvers to full-size to compact, all different makes and models. So I'm assuming you need to have a familiarity with a pretty broad range of handguns.
Yes, and we do. And I attend a lot of the armors courses. I have Gary Hibbs, who was my primary assistant. He's very versed. He's a gearhead, so he's very versed in all kind of handguns. So any question I have to go to him, whether we're in class or not. I said, Gary, can you come over and help me out? And he knows it. He knows everything. He knows how to follow it on YouTube. And if we need to, because we're sure everybody how to break their guns down and things like that, field strip them. And he goes through everything. He handled that segment of class, and then I handled the shooting tactics. But yeah, he is very, very well versed in knowledge on all types of handguns.
Excellent. Now, are there things that you have learned in your years? You started this back in 2010, so in the over 10 years that you've been doing this, are the things that you learned that if you could go back, you might do some things differently from the outset? So are there things that are evolutions of this that you've learned through all of that experience of running 30 or more courses?
Well, when I first came a firearms instructor for our police department, primarily we just range officers. We have our qualifications and we score them and things like that. If someone have a problem, they might address it with you or address it with somebody outside the agency. When we start teaching the women or even just the courses itself for civilians, we learned how to become real instructors, starting a person from step one. At the police department, they all get the basic training from the police academy. So a lot of times they come to the class thinking they know more than us. And even though we've been doing it 20 or 30 years, sometimes we had to bump heads with some of the officers. Depends on who their instructor was and what they were told. And that's okay. I learned a lot from the guys that come out the academy too. But when we started teaching civilians, I had to learn how to be an instructor, to start a person from step one and product of that they feel comfortable with their gun. So will we do anything else different? Probably not. I would practice more, try to learn more from all the different instructors when I attend like a leader conference or some of the other conferences that I try to attend and learn a lot from and try to grab everything I can. I don't always agree with the instructor, but I do grab some. I do get some out of every class that I go to.
Now, if somebody reached out to you from somewhere else and said, I'm really interested, I'm looking at starting this, would you recommend that they stick with the police wives theme, or would you make it more generic and say police spouses to perhaps open it up to spouses of both genders?
I would say to both genders, and that's something that we're going to consider looking at also. What teaching, when we named it police spouses, or police wives is what our original name was. Well, women came to the class, their husband knew all the equipment that they needed when we gave them a list. Now, when we open it up to all classes, we have to have extra stuff on hand because a lot of times the women don't know what's on that sheet, even though we give it to them. If they have no one to ask that might know, then they just come to the class blindly. And so we have to have extra equipment there just in case they have it, because they don't have somebody that can give them advice on it, like a police officer or something. Like, just what we're talking about.
Now, we've seen a pretty significant increase in the prevalence of patrol rifles for law enforcement in the last 10 years. Have you had requests from some of the spouses that have been through your program or the family members that have been through the program to say, my significant other has a patrol rifle that he brings home every day and locks up. I would like to know how to use that if that need ever arose. Have you had requests for, say, long guns, rifles, shotguns, anything along those lines?
Yes, we do, and we try to offer with those classes twice a year because I have a schedule for March to June, which is our first half of the season, and from July to November is our second half of the season. And so we try to schedule those topics within the first and second half so that we can cover those. For those who didn't make it the first time, they'll see the video and then they say, "Well, I want to get in that class." Well, we got another one coming up in our second half. Here in this, our range is outdoors. So therefore, we can only do it when weather permits. So that's why we start at the end of March and go up to November. Because in the Midwest, sometimes it gets cold.
Absolutely, and even the end of March and October can be pretty iffy in Chicagoland. Now, what are some of the key elements that you cover in the basic pistol fundamentals for children of police officers?
Our first thing is discipline, because we don't know what everyone's household is like. But the thing is, we have to instill discipline there. And what I mean by that is they have to do 3 push-ups every time there's a penalty that they violate. So when we get past that, and what I mean is, and we'll set them up so that they'll end up, someone's going to challenge it and not do what we told them to do. And so then the whole class will drop and do push-ups, run in a regiment style. And we don't want to embarrass kids that they can't do the push-ups. They just get in push-up position. That is okay. So we don't get in and drill you in your face, tell them to go down, get down, and all that. We just say, okay, everybody down. We're going to get in our push-up position. I count off 3, and we'll stand right back up. After about 3 or 4 times of those bouts, so everybody kind of followed along with the program. We never had one so far that we had to kick out of the class because he just wouldn't comply or listen or challenge us. So we start with that. Then with handling the gun, everybody has empty guns. We don't even go on the line. And we used to start with a classroom segment, but that means we had to transport them from the classroom out to the range, which is about 4 miles away. So we stopped doing that because some of the parents can't find the range to pick up their kid. So we just hold everything out there at the range. We do all our stuff in the field before we go over to the pavement where the range is at. And so we go over all different types of semantics of operating the gun, loading the gun with the dummy rounds, all that, and over and over and over again before we go out there. And then we start with the 1 round again. Now, everybody on the line don't shoot 1 round altogether. We do it in groups. Maybe 2 to 3 will fire with an instructor directly behind them. And then they have to put their gun on the ground. We don't allow them to have holsters. Everything, after you get done with every drill, that gun is benched on the ground in front of them. And everybody had to show me the palms of their hands to make sure that that's right. Because some parents are greatly concerned about the safety of their kids. And I don't never have to want to call a parent and say, I'm sorry. So we try to make sure we handle this in a safe manner. We don't let the parents stay for the class because they do interfere. And not that, it's intentional. It's just they have the love and safety of their kid. So they do interfere. So we don't let the parents stay.
Absolutely. And having coached kids' sports, I think everybody who's coached kids' sports can immediately relate to parents interfering. So how long a class is the basic fundamentals for children of police officers?
It runs 8 hours.
Okay.
And they have to bring their lunch. And so, like I said, and then at the end, we do a qualification form where they can win their badges, their certificates, and things like that. So you can see some proud faces leave their range at the end of that class when their parents come pick them up.
So with the kids program, I'm assuming that the badges and the certificates are a critical piece of that, something that would be important to the kids to take home?
Yes, and also they get a video. It takes me about a couple of days to do the video, and we post it on YouTube. With the parents' permission, of course, they have to sign for that. And then those kids can always refer back to it on their phone and show their friends what they did or whatever. Because we know as soon as they try to explain something that they did in that class and walk away, everybody's going to think they're lying. So we have it set up to where they can just run on their phone. Hey, I was shooting at moving targets. We were walking and shooting. We were laying on the ground shooting and stuff like that. Because if you go to a commercial range and stand in the booth, you don't have the luxury of doing some of those things.
Absolutely. So I'm assuming that's a key piece is being selective about the range facilities that you use so that you can do some of these things where you have moving targets, you have the people moving while they're shooting, is that's not going to be accessible at every range?
We use one range only, and that is the compound in Crete, Illinois. And he's been very cooperative with us. I have a trailer out there with all my equipment stored in it, so that when we hold classes, we don't have to transport nothing over there. Everything is all right there, and that's been working great for us. So I work two jobs, so I don't have the privilege of traveling around like some instructors do, and I'm jealous. But I getting off work is sometimes to schedule it on the weekends where I'm available.
Absolutely. Now, would you recommend that firearms trainers with an agency set up a class to teach officers with their agency how to do familiarization with younger children? Like, I think every parent knows that as soon as you tell a child, don't do that, don't touch this gun, then the challenge has been issued, as opposed to perhaps doing some education around how to safely, if they ever had to do that. Is that something that people should maybe be thinking about as well?
I would think so, but now we're talking about a police officer doing it with his agency. Of course, he's going to have to get agency approval. Some police chiefs or some of the agency administrators are very liability conscious and don't want anything happen that they might be on the news. So a lot of times that don't happen. So that's what we offer this class every year. And sometimes if there's enough interest, we'll host an additional class if people express that they want to bring their kid to this class. Like I said, we try not to turn nobody down if all possible, but we try to fill that class that we have. If there's another opportunity to get enough requests that we can start another class, of course we will. And like our staff has been great as far as doing this class. Now, something I didn't mention, from doing these classes, we've won the 2012 and 2013 Public Service Award by the National Rifle Association, where the staff has went to Arlington, Virginia, during their fall conference to receive awards for doing this. So, of course, we got to continue this now. We just not going to quit because we got the awards.
Absolutely. Now, you branched out from the original course being Please Wives and Daughters and Mothers to open it up to any women that wanted to participate. You talked about the children's class, the fundamentals, basic pistol fundamentals for children of police officers. Now, you're also involved in teaching programs to community members. So I want to start by one of the most recent projects, which is a 4-hour course that you teach on carjacking survival. And with you being in the Chicago area, carjacking is become the #1 industry with certain people in Chicagoland. Can you talk about what prompted you to start this carjacking survival course, what's included in that, how you roll it out, how you vet people if you do as to who would attend the class?
Okay, now we had started this class maybe about 3 years ago, and it was a 2-hour called Survival Skill Workshop where we just dealt basically with shooting from a car, things like that. Now, December 1st of 2020, my son driving my red Mustang, bright red Mustang, almost got carjacked. And give you a little backup story on this. All my kids come and help me with my class. And my class is where they film, and that's how I develop the videos, because they come and film all the activities. So they hear all my presentations on a regular basis, to where it's instilled in their mind, where they joke with me all the time about different things I say and things like that in the class. Well, my son pulled up in front of the house and said, "I think I'm being followed." And he was on the phone with his mother, and I'm sitting right next to her, and I can hear the conversation. So he said, "I think I'm being followed." She said, "You sure?" He said, "I've been driving around in circles, and this guy's been on my tail." So I told him, "Meet us at the plaza," which is a block away from our house, which I know that's well lit and is under camera. So I jumped in him and his mother jumped in the car. We raced down to the plaza. I pulled in the lot. My son pulled in from a different direction, racing towards me, and he was right. This car is right on his tail. He's still on the phone with his mother. Told his mother, tell him to stop now. When he slammed on the brakes right next to me, I jumped out because I know that the person behind his energy is trying to come forward. So I know he can't put in reverse that quick. I jumped out, ran right up to him, pointed my gun right in his face, and he didn't move. And the mother stayed on the phone with the police. The police came there in a matter of seconds. Now, I retired from this department, so from Chicago Heights, and that's what just happened there. I was so glad that somebody recognized me when they pulled up and see me holding a gun, holding a person at bay, and I'm in plain clothes. I felt so relieved because I thought I'm going to have to put this gun down or I might get shot. So now, that's what made me think we need to add more to this class that we're doing because my son almost got snatched. A car got snatched from him. And so therefore, we're incorporating pepper spray, defenses from when people grab you, how you can break their hold, things like that, as opposed to just shooting. That can be very important because my son is 17 years old, so naturally he cannot legally carry a gun. And so there's other women there that might not want to carry a gun, but they want to know things that they can do to defend themselves or prevent being carjacked. So we're going to provide them with a lot of information prior to coming to the class and then show them tactics and things they can do to save themselves, not necessarily the car, but save themselves from harm, injury, or things, something like that.
Excellent. And so what's some of the feedback that you've got from people regarding that carjacking survival class?
Well, my daughter made a very beautiful flyer, very inviting flyer. When I posted it on Facebook, I've been getting a lot of people saying, well, sign me up, can I come help, whatever. It's been getting a great feedback from it.
Excellent. So talk about some of the other programs that you offer, because you founded, back in 1981, you founded the Metropolitan Police Self-Defense Institute. You've been involved, as I said, in a variety of martial arts from since 1974. You're 10th Dan in one of the disciplines. So talk about some of the other programs that you teach that would be delivered to members of the community, and the importance of perhaps law enforcement looking at delivering some of those programs to members of the community.
All right. Every year, we teach a class for the seniors at the Senior Center at Bloom Township Center here in Chicago Heights. And we do that every year. I've been doing it probably the last 8-9 years. And that's been a great turnout for that. We get some church organizations who are saying, we're having incidents that happen in our community. Can you come over and speak? And by all means, we're going to try to schedule it so somebody can be there. I'm primarily the instructor, but I try to get other people to come to help. If we're holding a seniors class, of course, they can't do wrist locks on each other or escaping from each other. So I bring people that can grab them and show them how they can escape. And no matter how strong or how big that person is, you don't have to be intimidated by his size, that you can still escape from their grasp. So we work on things like that. Also talk about, and most of the retirement classes of retired people, very intelligent people, always have some great answers, questions. They talk about different things, some of their incidents that they have, and think about what could I do it did better, and things like that. And we try to educate them as much as we can. But also at the same time, I try to provide them with a lot of information they can take home to read also.
Now, is part of the key with dealing with civilians, whether it's a carjacking class or some of these other classes, around awareness and avoidance and not just jumping right into, okay, now it's happened? Some of that, I guess, that left a bang philosophy.
You're right. And so we can avoid problems. It'd be a whole lot better than trying to get out of a problem. So, yeah, we do, like I said, I give them a lot of information to take so they can try to avoid a problem if all possible. And there's plenty of information out there that we can share, or you can send them resources to where they can get it. And that really helps out.
So, do you find that by offering some of these classes on, and I don't know if self-defense is the right word, but some of these classes on personal protection, personal safety, environmental awareness, that this is a way that law enforcement trainers can get involved with members of the community and start to make some of those connections and perhaps break down some of these barriers?
Yes, sir, I sure do. And I think that's been one of a key with us as far as getting involved with the community, doing a class for kids over at the high school or even in the community, the churches and things like that, where people have a lot of questions they want to ask. And sometimes they don't have no one to ask. They only go by what they see on TV, and they think that's gospel. So we try to educate them as much as we can and answer the questions and sit there and joke with them. And some programs they have, coffee with a cop and things like that. We try to get involved with some of that stuff. And at that time, you can also talk about your programs to where you can offer them something. It's not always about money. And that's what some people think, well, how much is this going to cost? Ma'am, it is nothing. Just come to the class. Bring yourself. That's all we want you to do.
So, what advice would you have for law enforcement instructors? I think that sometimes we want to just maybe jump in and teach the same stuff we're teaching cops. But is there a need to step back from that and say, what are some basic fundamental things that we could teach people to help them just be safe in their day-to-day activities, maybe break away from something in order to escape rather than the law enforcement mentality, which is we're looking to apprehend as opposed to get out of there?
Right. Our law enforcement classes are to be aggressive, but in our civilian classes, we all talk about escape. We don't want you to be karate experts and things like that, and we can't teach you that in a matter of a few hours, but we can teach you simple things of escape if someone grabs you, how to defend yourself as far as someone grab you by the throat, how you can get that hand off your throat, because the greatest fear of man is suffocation. So if you can't breathe, we're going to panic. But things someone grabbing you, I know they have a firm grip on you. How can you escape and get away from them? And that's what pepper spray and things like that can really help if need be, as opposed to teaching them to be aggressive. We're gonna stomp, kick, punch, gouge his eyes out and all that. Well, some people don't have the fortitude to do that. So we do tone back as far as with civilians.
Now, is mindset something that you address in these classes as well, about the realities that, if you're going to pepper spray somebody, chances are you're going to get contaminated as well or cross-contaminated? Or do you address mindset and the mental aspect of some of these in some of these programs?
Yes, we do. We have a lot of videos of classes we did in the past with law and people who've actually experienced the effects of pepper spray. Sometimes it depends on the age group. Of course, we got senior citizens. Nobody wants to experience no pepper spray. Holding a community group, well, we get some person might say, well, I'd like to try it. And then the audience itself can see firsthand what this person is suffering through if he gets any exposure. But we also talk about if you do get exposed, you might get some blowback on you, or something like that. Just hold your eyes open, because it really takes effect when you blink. It's when pepper spray really takes effect. So if you have to hold your eye open to run, then do that. Just make sure you can get to a safe place and then try to decontaminate yourself.
Is one of the issues from mindset is avoiding people walking away thinking that they're that they're bulletproof, or they're some kind of ninja, that they're going to go out and they can go wherever they want now because they've got these special skills. I mean, I remember seeing an interview with somebody years ago where they had watched Billy Banks' Taibo classes online, and they thought that they were Chuck Norris after watching some of these classes. Is that something that you see you need to make sure that these people understand the realities of some of these dynamics?
Yes, and with our classes, my regular martial arts class, they're very humble when they come to class, and they know of training so they can escalate and run and things like that. But our workshops are only about a couple of hours, and so therefore they really don't get that much skill to where they're gonna feel like they really that bad. I experience more of that with the concealed carry people, where they think every problem can be handled with their gun, And so that's what we try to change their mind on some of that. You just can't shoot everybody because you're having a conflict with them.
So is the legal side, do you cover the law in these classes as well so that they understand legal requirements and what the law allows them to do and some of those parameters around these legal issues? And from a legal standpoint, what might happen if they're involved in a use of force event?
Yes, we do. And they talk about the aftermath of a event also. We cover a lot of that. And so we got some videos. We bring the law book and like I say, a lot of retired people who have a lot of experience and ask some very good questions about things that our answers can benefit the whole class if some people are afraid to speak up.
So for fellow ILETA members that are thinking now that the wheels are turning and they're thinking about starting some of these programs, what advice do you have for people that would be looking at just starting out a program? Let's say for firearms, basic pistol fundamentals for police spouses. What are some of the things that they should really be considering up front before they launch into this?
Just in case things may happen, we try to make sure that they don't. But people skills, have some people skills. If you're yelling at people and making them very nervous, then you're going to have a lot of problems. So some people who never picked up a gun, then you just compound their nervous by belittling and things like that. So people skills is very important. But also, you can learn about how to diffuse, because actually that is diffusing a situation when you go and talk to a person that is afraid to death of that gun, and now you start yelling at them so that they get so nervous that they don't know what to do, and they just panic. And so try to be much more compassionate to a person who picked up a gun.
Now, I'm assuming that the firearms laws are quite different from location to location. Chicagoland, from what I understand, there's quite strict firearms laws. Other places, they're far more lenient with their firearms. And, some places people can carry openly or don't need certain permits to carry concealed. Is it important that trainers looking at starting this, seek some legal advice first before they start one of these, just so that they understand what the nuances are around civilians and firearms?
Yes, and I'm near the border of Indiana, so the Indiana laws are different from Illinois, and that is some good questions. Can I bring my gun across state lines to go shopping because the gas is cheaper? Groceries are cheaper in Indiana, so can they, carry a gun on them when they go into these other states? So yeah, that is very important, and we try to instill in the instructors that come to assist us in our class. Make sure you can look up these laws. Make sure they have access to it. And with our phone in our pocket, we have a walking computer. We can look up anything that we need that you can answer their question, or refer the class to sources where they can find those answers too.
And I'm assuming that's another issue as well when you're looking at, like the pistol fundamentals for children of police officers, where you have 12 to 16-year-olds in the class, as far as what are the laws around minors handling of firearms, what are the laws around transporting firearms to the range, who's allowed to transport some of those things, you need to be sure you're checking into all of these prior to the class?
Yes, very important, and we hope that the juvenile that comes to the class really don't have access to the guns without the parents' permission, or to keep them secured and things like that. And that's something we really don't have any way to control of, except that we insist the way they bring the gun to the class, and so that we know it's safe when we bring it. We always do inspections of the students, the guns, and things like that at the start of the class. But to answer your question there, yes, we do try to make sure that everyone is up on that law as far as transporting that gun to the class. Everyone has to be, because we don't want the bad light coming on us also as far as hosting that class.
Absolutely. Now, what type of feedback do you get from the law enforcement professionals whose family members attend these classes, or their family members are looking at attending these classes? Do you have concerns that are raised by law enforcement professionals or feedback from them after their family members have attended these programs?
Well, when we first offered a class, every man has this same phrase. Well, I don't want her to learn how to shoot because she might shoot me. We get that all the time. But eventually, the wives do come because, like, the way our climate is here in Chicago area, crime is on the uprise, and especially with carjackings and things like that. So we get a lot of them call, hey, when's the next class you holding, Brian? And we like to get my wife in, like get my daughter in it. My daughter's getting ready to go away to college, in the one classes or whatever. So we always post a schedule out there so they can just sign up. But now I always get positive feedback from all the police officers whose kids or wives come to the class.
Do you ever have issues with officers wanting to come with their spouse? Now, I know you run some couples classes. Are there different dynamics when you have couples there, things that you've learned that you need to be very aware of?
No, we run the class the same way. And like I said, we still crack jokes. We still have everybody laughing. And so, no, we don't run the class any different. It's the same curriculum, whether it's the co-ed class or the basic wives class. No change at all. But for the police wives, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Carry on.
For the police wives class, no men can attend.
Okay.
None at all. Yeah. So it won't turn into arguments there at the class.
Now, do you run classes where police officers can come with their spouses or come with their family members and participate? Yes.
And our co-ed class is open for anybody. Yeah, and we have some that came with their wives. For the most part, they just send their wife, and they don't want to come with them. But it is open for anybody.
Now, do you have to establish ground rules that you guys will do the teaching, that it's not their job to teach their spouse, it's their job to participate in the class as a student?
Absolutely. And when that starts to seem like it's going to become a conflict, we separate them on the line. You move four people down, and so that you have no contact with each other until you break for lunch or break for a rest break or something like that.
So when you get those police officers that say, I don't want you teaching my spouse how to shoot because they're going to shoot me, do you help them to understand that if that's going to happen, it's going to happen anyways? They might as well be proficient with the firearm, or how do you address that?
Yes, we do. I mean, it always turns into a big joke and everybody laughs and all that. But at the same time, now here's an example. We were in Mokina Fire Department. We were teaching the firefighters how to render a handgun safe, and that's when concealed carry became legal in Illinois, which was by early 2014. And so we offered this class, firefighters' wives, and everyone said, "No, I don't want to learn how to shoot and all that." So we showed them a video of a home invasion where this woman is at home with her child, and a guy ran in and just started beating on her. And she didn't know anything about him. He had some mental issues and things like that. Well, we got 65% of them people sent their wives, daughters, or mothers to their class after that.
Now,
and they still keep in contact with us.
Excellent. Now, you brought up an interesting point. Is that something that you've seen many places do with law enforcement professionals teaching firefighters, paramedics? Sometimes it's the same group. Sometimes paramedics are separate from the fire service. How to make firearms safe, where if they're at the scene of one of these before the police show up, to address some of these potential safety issues around firearms?
Well, we did right prior to January 2014. Only people you would see that were expected to have a firearm in the state of Illinois were law enforcement or military. Now, after that point, some firemen proactively thinking, what if we had to transport a patient who had a carry? And so now, procedures. What if we have to touch that gun? If none of our firemen, firefighters know what to do with that gun, that means we created a very dangerous scene if we had to take that gun from that person and you're not familiar with that hand.
And I'm assuming with the prevalence of gang shootings in the Chicago area, and it's not simply Chicago area, this is a problem in a lot of places, that paramedics may be transporting the victim of a shooting and in transport might realize that, hey, this guy has a gun on him. Is that another thing where it might be then prudent for them to know how to make that safe so that there's not some unintentional discharge of the firearm in the back of an ambulance?
It's very true. Very true. And car accidents, a lot of people now.
Absolutely, and I'm assuming that would be even more of an issue in places where there's a high prevalence of citizens carrying firearms legally, right? That they would have the concealed carry.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes, we're experiencing that a lot now.
Excellent. Well, a lot of great information, Brian. Now, a couple things. First of all, what's the best way for people to find out more about you, reach out to you if they want to pick your brain more about this topic or want to get some more information on your organization, the Metropolitan Police Self-Defense Organization, or some of the classes that you offer? What's the best way for people to reach out to you, connect with you?
Oh, I got plenty of resources way they can get to me. I have email, which is brownhornet525@yahoo.com. Second email is smithb525@gmail.com. My website is mpsdichicago.com. And you can reach me any of them, and I spend my whole evenings answering emails, so I get right back to you.
Excellent. And you're certainly a busy man, so that's great that people are able to access you that easily. So the question I'm asking everybody at the end of the Season 4 interviews for the ILETA Learning Lab is, what is one resource that you would recommend to fellow ILETA members to help them become a better trainer? So it might be a book or a training program or a podcast or a TED Talk or whatever. What would be one resource that you would recommend to fellow ILETA members to help them become a better trainer?
All right. Now, I was asked to come into a grade school one time to speak to a group of 7th and 8th graders. And while talking to the students, I noticed on the wall a poster, and I couldn't see who with a verse on it, and I couldn't see who the author was on that verse. But it said, "Those who dare to teach should never cease to learn." And that has stuck with me ever since. And I'm talking about, I saw this like in 1995 or something like that. And that has really stuck with me. And so going to these different conferences and stuff like that, and I can't tell you one particular program that you can really use to learn, because I've came across so many over the years. I first started training in 1978, training police and things like that. And I've attended a lot of different conferences, and with the ILETA, I get a lot of resources from there. And I leave there with that conference with a lot of information. And so that's the only thing I can tell you. Just try to train, learn as much as you can. You might not always agree with it, but you always going to learn something.
Excellent. Great advice. And that's such a great quote. Those who dare to teach should never cease to learn. Did you ever find out who the author of that quote was?
No, I had no reason to go back to that school, but I would like to know who wrote it.
Okay. Well, there you go. Now that we'll have to do some research and see if we can figure that out. So, Brian, I want to thank you for making time for the interview. Like I said, you're a very busy man, and I appreciate you carving time out of your busy schedule to do the interview. And I want to thank you for your commitment, for your 43 years in law enforcement, for all of the years that you've been involved in instructing law enforcement officers, their families, and community members. So for everything that you have done, everything that you continue to do, thank you so much for that service and that commitment and your contributions to this profession and to our families.
Thank you, sir, and it was an honor to be asked.
And so I want to also thank the listeners. I want to thank you as a listener for being a member of ILETA and for being a trainer. As a trainer, you are in one of the most influential positions, leadership positions in this profession. Being a good trainer is a lot of work, and I thank you for making that commitment. And I encourage you to let the information that Brian shared with you in this interview, and he shared a lot of great information, let that information simmer, percolate. Be sure to write down your greatest takeaways and write out some action steps. What actions are you going to take to put this information into place way, and then reach out to an accountability partner and share that with them, because that accountability is a glue that binds commitment to results. And as always, I encourage you to be an active member of ILEADA and engage in discussions with fellow trainers about your takeaways from these interviews. Reach out to instructors like Brian who are being interviewed to get more information on topics of interest to you. And please actively recruit new members to the organization. The way this community of trainers will grow and thrive is with your involvement and your commitment. So be sure to visit the ILEADA website regularly to take advantage of all the member benefits, including this weekly podcast, the ILEADA Journal, and a host of other benefits for being a member of this community. So until next week, thank you for your service. Stay humble and continue to train, learn, and grow.